The galaxy was vast, filled with countless stars, millions of worlds, and endless civilizations. For thousands of years, those civilizations fought each other. Some wars were small, some were long and bitter. But all of them had one thing in common: they were wars of pride, power, and territory. Armies clashed, treaties were signed, and life went on. But then came an enemy no one could bargain with. They called it the Zarathi Swarm. It was not a nation, nor a people, but a tide of living hunger. They did not build cities. They did not care for wealth, and they did not speak. The swarm only consumed. From the smallest moon to the richest homeworld, everything was food for them. At first, the galaxy laughed. The great empires thought it was only another wild species spreading too far. Fleets were sent, battles were fought, and reports came back of victory. But the swarm adapted. Every battle the empires fought only taught the swarm how to grow stronger. Every defeat only made the tide larger. Soon, whole sectors were lost. Planets screamed for help, but no one came. Armies broke, navies were eaten alive, and still the swarm pushed forward. The great alliance of species, the proud union that claimed to protect all free worlds, was on its knees. The council chambers of the alliance turned cold and silent. Leaders shouted at each other, blaming one another for failure. Some called for surrender, others for retreat, and many whispered that the galaxy itself was doomed. But one desperate voice spoke of an option no one had considered. A Kaloran ambassador stood up, his scales trembling, and said the words that would change history: "Call Earth." For a moment, the chamber was filled with silence. The word itself sounded strange, almost insulting, like suggesting a child to fight in a war of giants. Earth was a death world, a planet of storms, diseases, and predators. Its people had only joined the Galactic community a century ago. Compared to the great empires, humanity was young, reckless, and untested. Many laughed. Some shouted in anger, "You want to beg help from primitives? They have no fleets worth mentioning. Their armies are children compared to ours." But the Kaloran ambassador only whispered back, "Children of death grow quickly." Desperation forced the council to listen. Messages were sent across the stars faster than light, carrying the same plea over and over again. "We ask for soldiers. We ask for aid. We ask for Earth." On Earth, the message was received. It was translated, debated, and finally delivered to the highest leaders of humanity. The world watched in silence as the words echoed, "They want soldiers." And humanity answered. When the reply reached the Alliance Council, it was simple and short. Only 4 words appeared on the screen: "We are sending them." The council celebrated. At last, reinforcements were coming. They imagined fresh recruits, brave young warriors eager to prove themselves. Perhaps human soldiers would bring new courage, new life to their broken armies. Perhaps Earth would finally show its loyalty to the galaxy. But they did not understand. When Earth said it was sending soldiers, they imagined soldiers as they knew them, bright-eyed, loud, hungry for glory. They imagined youth carrying banners, singing songs, and charging into battle. But what Earth sent was something else entirely. The first transports arrived weeks later, black ships cutting through the stars. They did not carry banners. They did not carry songs. When the hatches opened and the humans stepped down, the aliens waiting to welcome them felt their blood run cold. They were not young. They were not smiling. They were scarred, hardened, and silent. Their eyes were the eyes of predators. Their armor was black, heavy, and marked with the burns of 100 battles. Their weapons were massive, built not to frighten but to kill. The alien commander who greeted them expected words of honor, speeches of bravery. Instead, the humans said nothing. They checked their weapons. They studied the horizon where the swarm would come. The commander turned to his officers, whispering in disbelief, "These are not soldiers." The words were heavy, almost fearful. "These are executioners." The war was about to change. The city of Kaloran Prime was ready to receive its allies. The last stronghold before the swarm arrived was a fortress of steel and fire. Around its walls stood soldiers from dozens of species, weary and broken but still holding the line. They waited for Earth's soldiers, the so-called reinforcements. Hope and fear mixed together in their hearts. Many of them thought, maybe these humans will bring courage. Maybe they will fight alongside us like brothers. The day came when the first black transport ships broke through the clouds. They descended slowly, engines growling like beasts. The Alliance soldiers gathered near the landing field, banners raised, voices echoing, ready to cheer for the new arrivals. The doors of the ships hissed open and silence followed. One by one, the humans stepped out. They were tall, heavy, and scarred. Their armor was dark, marked with scratches, dents, and old blood. Their faces were cold, eyes sharp as knives. There was no youth among them, no bright smiles, no cheers. These were not fresh recruits. These were not young warriors hungry for glory. They were men and women who had already seen war. They walked like predators. They carried weapons so massive that some of the aliens whispered in fear. How could such heavy tools even be lifted? The Alliance soldiers, who had expected songs and hope, suddenly felt small. The commander of Caloran Prime, a proud general with medals shining on his chest, stepped forward to greet them. His voice was loud, trying to show strength. "Welcome, soldiers of Earth. The Alliance thanks you for answering our call. Today, you fight not just for your world, but for all worlds." He expected cheers. He expected shouts of agreement, but the humans said nothing. The silence was heavy. Only the sound of weapons clicking, armor shifting, boots hitting the metal ground. Their leader, a tall woman with steel-gray eyes, simply nodded once. She did not make a speech. She did not smile. She turned to her soldiers, raised her hand, and they moved into formation without a single word. The alien general's voice faltered. He looked to his officers, his throat dry. Whispering so only they could hear, he said, "These are not soldiers." His second-in-command, staring at the humans' lifeless expressions, replied with a trembling voice, "No, Commander. These are executioners." The words spread like fire among the troops. Some laughed nervously. Some grew afraid. Some even felt anger. Executioners? What did that mean? The answer came when the swarm attacked. The sky above Caloran Prime darkened. Clouds of wings blotted out the stars. The ground shook as millions of insectoid legs hammered the soil. The swarm came like a storm, screaming, endless, unstoppable. The Alliance soldiers had seen this before. Normally, this was when panic began. Weapons would fire wildly, formations would break, and screams of fear would fill the air. But this time, something was different. The humans walked forward. Calm, silent. Their faces did not twist in fear. Their voices did not rise in panic. They lined up at the front, their massive weapons resting in their hands. The swarm roared. The humans did not roar back. And then, fire erupted. Thunder shook the battlefield. Rivers of plasma poured from human rifles, tearing through the front lines of the swarm. Explosions ripped across the field as human launchers fired shells that split the earth apart. Every bullet, every shot, every blast was precise. The humans did not waste fire. They did not miss. The swarm screamed as thousands of their kind were cut down in seconds. Their charge slowed, then faltered. Behind the humans, the Alliance soldiers froze in awe. They had never seen war like this. For them, war was chaos and terror. But for the humans, it was something else. It was work. They moved like machines, every step steady, every shot controlled. They did not shout. They did not cry. Their faces were empty, their eyes cold, and the swarm broke against them like waves against stone. Hours passed, and when the battle ended, the ground was covered in fire and ash. The swarm lay in piles of broken bodies. The humans stood in silence, reloading their weapons. Not a single one of them had fallen. The aliens, still trembling, could only stare. Their voices whispered in fear, in wonder, in disbelief. They asked Earth for soldiers, but Earth sent something else. The humans said nothing. They only turned, eyes still cold, as if the battle had been nothing but a task to finish. The war on Caloran Prime was not over. The swarm would return. But from that day, every alien who had seen the humans fight knew one truth that would never leave their hearts. These were not soldiers of Earth. They were executioners. The days after the humans arrived were tense. The Alliance soldiers watched them from a distance, whispering among themselves. Some were curious, some afraid, and some even angry. They did not understand why the humans were so quiet, why they did not laugh, sing, or boast like other armies. The humans stayed together, moving only when needed. They cleaned their weapons, sharpened their blades, checked their armor. Every action was calm, controlled, and exact. They did not waste time with speeches or talk of glory. They prepared. The Caloran general grew restless. He had hoped these humans would bring new energy, something to lift the spirits of his tired soldiers. Instead, their silence was heavy. But deep inside, he also felt something else, a spark of fear, like standing too close to fire. That fire was about to be unleashed. On the 7th night after the humans landed, the alarms rang. The swarm was coming. The ground began to shake. The sky turned black as millions of wings blotted out the moons. From the forests and mountains, waves of insectoid creatures poured forth, their shrieks echoing across the plains. Their claws hammered the ground, their jaws snapped, and their bodies glowed with the sick light of their acid blood. The defenders of Caloran Prime rushed to the walls, weapons ready. Their voices trembled. They had seen this before. They had lost before. But the humans did not tremble. They walked to the front lines in silence, forming a wall of black armor. Their leader, the tall woman with steel-gray eyes, raised her hand. No words. Just a signal. The swarm roared as it charged, and the humans fired. The night exploded with fire and thunder. Human rifles spat streams of plasma, each shot cutting through the swarm like blades of light. Their heavy cannons boomed, sending shells that shattered the ground into firestorms. Machine guns roared, tearing endless lines of creatures into pieces. The swarm screamed in rage, their endless bodies surging forward. But every time they touched the human line, they died. The aliens behind them froze. They had fought the swarm for years, always in fear, always in desperation. But what they saw now was different. The humans did not fight with fear. They did not panic, they did not scream. They killed. Every shot was precise. Every movement was practiced. Their faces did not change. To them, this was not chaos. This was not terror. This was work. The Caloran general could not believe his eyes. The humans moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. They were calm even as thousands of creatures threw themselves against their line. They were steady even as acid splashed and claws tore at their armor. Hours passed. The battlefield became a sea of burning bodies. The swarm's endless wave crashed again and again, but the humans never broke. Not a single step back, not a single cry for mercy. And then, as suddenly as it began, the swarm pulled back. Their shrieks faded into the night, leaving only smoke and silence. The field was covered in corpses. The stench of acid and blood filled the air. Fires burned in the distance. The Alliance soldiers stared in shock. They had lost no ground. They had lost no lives. And most of all, the humans had lost none of their own. The general slowly walked forward, his voice trembling. By the start, how is this possible? One of the humans, a scarred man cleaning his rifle, glanced at him. His voice was flat, empty of pride. We do not fight wars. We end them. The general swallowed hard. For years his people had died screaming against the swarm. For years their fleets had shattered, their worlds consumed. But these humans, they had stood against the same nightmare, and they had turned it into dust. Around him, whispers began to spread through the soldiers of the Alliance. They are not like us. They do not fight as we fight. They kill like no one else can. Fear and awe mixed in their hearts. The humans had saved them. But at what cost to their souls? The Caloran general looked at the steel-gray woman who commanded the humans. She stood tall, silent, her face unreadable. Her soldiers followed her as still as shadows, as cold as stone. And in that moment, the general knew the truth. They had not asked Earth for soldiers. Soldiers fought for hope, for glory, for banners and songs. Soldiers dreamed of honor, but Earth had sent something darker, something heavier. Executioners, and the swarm had just met its first taste of judgment. The battlefield was quiet. The fires still burned, smoke still rose into the dark sky, and the stench of acid and blood hung heavy in the air. But the most unsettling thing was not the silence of the swarm, it was the silence of the humans. They did not cheer. They did not shout victory songs. They did not raise their weapons in triumph. They simply stood there, breathing slow, their faces cold as stone. The Alliance soldiers watched them with wide eyes. For them, every small victory had always been followed by desperate joy. They would hug, laugh, and cry, celebrating that they had survived another day. But the humans did not act like survivors. They acted like something else, like workers who had finished a task, nothing more. The Kaloran general stepped carefully among the piles of burning swarm bodies. He approached the human commander, the tall woman with steel-gray eyes. Her armor was scorched, her weapon still smoking, but her face remained calm. "Commander," the general said, his voice unsteady, "you have done what no one else could. You held the line. You did not lose a single soldier." She looked at him with those sharp, cold eyes. "The line is not held," she replied flatly. "The swarm will return. They always return." The general swallowed, his mouth dry. "Then what do you call this? This victory?" Her gaze turned back toward the horizon, where the swarm had fled. "Not victory," she said, "only preparation." The general felt a chill run down his spine. Behind her, the humans worked in silence. They moved across the field, checking their weapons, gathering ammunition, and pulling their dead enemies into piles. Not one of them spoke. The only sounds were the metallic clicks of rifles and the crunch of boots against ash. Finally, one of the younger alien officers, unable to hold his curiosity, stepped forward and asked a human soldier, "Why do you not cheer? Why do you not celebrate? You have killed thousands, and yet you stand silent." The human soldier did not look at him. His scarred hands kept working as he answered in a voice low and steady, "Because killing is not something to celebrate." The officer frowned, confused. "But is it not a victory?" The soldier finally looked up, his eyes tired, almost hollow. "Victory is when the war is over. Until then, this is just work." The word spread quickly among the aliens, and they did not know how to feel. These humans, these Deathworlders, were unlike anyone they had ever fought beside. They were not hungry for honor. They were not lifted by glory. They carried war like a weight on their shoulders, and it seemed that weight had been there for a very long time. That night, around the campfires of the Alliance, the whispers grew. Do they even feel anything? Have they fought wars like this before? Are they even like us? Some feared them. Some admired them. But none could ignore the truth. The humans were different. The general himself could not sleep. The images of the battle replayed in his mind. He remembered the swarm screaming, the endless tide charging. He remembered his own people trembling on the walls. And he remembered the humans walking forward, calm and silent, as if death itself did not frighten them. At last, he gathered the courage to ask the human commander directly. He found her standing alone outside the city wall, her rifle resting against her shoulder, her eyes scanning the night sky. She looked like a statue of iron. "Commander," the general said softly, "I must ask you something." She turned her head slightly, giving him a glance that made his heart beat faster. "Why do your soldiers fight this way? Without fear, without joy, without mercy?" She studied him for a long moment before answering. Her voice was steady, but there was a cold sadness hidden within it. "Because we come from Earth," she said, "and Earth is a death world. Every creature there is a hunter. Every day is survival. We learned early that fear will kill you faster than teeth or claws, so we killed fear." The general shivered. She continued, "We do not cheer because war is not new to us. We do not celebrate because we know it will return. We do not show mercy because mercy does not exist in the place that made us. You asked for soldiers, but soldiers fight for honor. We fight to finish the job." Her eyes narrowed, her voice grew sharp. "We are not soldiers, General. We are executioners. That is why we were sent." The general felt the truth of her words sink deep into his bones. The humans did not come to share their war. They came to end it. Behind them, the night was still. The fires burned low. The swarm's bodies turned to ash, and the silence of the humans pressed down on the camp like a heavy cloak. And though the Alliance soldiers had gained hope, they also gained a new kind of fear, the fear of their allies. Because now they understood. The swarm was not the only monster on the battlefield. The war did not slow. The swarm came again and again, pouring across the stars like rivers of fire. Worlds burned, fleets vanished, and yet wherever the humans stood, the tide broke. Planet after planet was saved. Fortress after fortress was secured. The black-armored humans walked forward, and the swarm fell back. To many they were saviors. To others they were something far darker. Because the more the galaxy saw them fight, the more uneasy they became. On battlefields where other soldiers screamed in fear, humans were silent. Where others fired wildly, humans shot with calm precision. Where others ran for cover, humans advanced. And when the battle ended, there was no celebration. No laughter, no music. The humans only cleaned their weapons, packed their gear, and prepared for the next slaughter. The Alliance soldiers began to whisper in their camps. They frighten me more than the swarm. Do they even feel alive? I think they enjoy this. One night on the burned world of Siroth, a group of alien soldiers sat together by the dim glow of their fires. Their voices were low, but their fear was sharp. They say humans are from a death world, one whispered. What if they are just like the swarm? What if they only kill because that is all they know? Another, his voice shaking, replied, Maybe when this war is finished, they will turn on us. Maybe Earth has sent executioners not just for the swarm, but for anyone who stands in their way. The others did not answer, but in their silence, the thought grew heavy. Even commanders felt the same fear. In the councils of war, they praised humanity's skill, but in private, they wondered what price would come after. On the surface of battlefields, the fear was worse. An alien soldier named Tralos, a young fighter from the Orlan species, fought side by side with the humans during the siege of Theros. When the swarm broke against them, he dropped to his knees, shaking with relief. He laughed, he cried, and he hugged his comrades. But then he turned, and he saw the humans. They were walking among the piles of dead, shooting each swarm body once more to make sure it did not rise. Their eyes were cold, their movements mechanical. They looked less like men and women and more like reapers passing judgment. Tralos felt his blood freeze. He whispered to his commander, They are not like us, they look at war the way a butcher looks at meat. And his commander did not disagree. Even the Kaloran general who had seen their arrival on Prime felt his heart twist with unease. He admired their strength. He knew without them, the swarm would have already devoured the galaxy. Yet when he stood in their presence, he could not stop the feeling that the humans were not allies, but a weapon barely contained. It was not hatred. It was not anger. It was fear. The more the humans fought, the more victories they brought, the more that fear grew, because the galaxy had asked Earth for soldiers. Soldiers who fight for hope, for glory, for banners and honor. But Earth had not sent soldiers. Earth had sent executioners, and executioners had no love for what they killed. They killed because it was their purpose. One council leader, a frail elder from the Sarathi race, spoke in secret with his advisors. His voice trembled as he said, The swarm is terrible, yes, but at least the swarm kills because it must feed. The humans kill because they know nothing else. Tell me, when the swarm is gone, who will they turn to next? No one answered him. On the front lines, however, the humans remained unchanged. They did not care about whispers or praise or fear. They followed orders, they fought, and they destroyed the swarm wherever they found it. Their silence was their shield. Their discipline was their weapon. But in the hearts of their allies, doubt grew like a shadow. And as the war spread toward the galactic core, many leaders could not help but ask themselves one quiet question that would haunt them even in their dreams. Had they saved themselves from the swarm? Only to unleash something even worse? The galaxy prayed the answer would never come. The war had stretched across years, and the swarm had eaten half the stars of the Alliance. Entire fleets had been torn apart. Countless cities lay in ashes. The great powers of the galaxy were broken, their people hopeless. Yet one name still gave them strength. Earth. Wherever the humans went, the swarm died. Black-armored executioners marched into burning worlds and turned nightmares into silence. Planets that should have been lost were reclaimed. The galaxy had begun to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. But then the swarm came in full. The queen herself had risen. Her brood was the largest ever seen, a tide of billions. They fell upon the galactic core, the heart of all civilizations. World after world crumbled as her endless army devoured stars. Fleets of the Alliance tried to resist, but they were shattered like glass. It was clear to all. The final battle had come. If the core fell, there would be no galaxy left to save. The Council called every surviving ship, every soldier, every weapon to one place. The fortress world of Varos, a planet of steel and fire built to withstand anything. If Varos fell, nothing else would stop the Queen. And into that dark storm came the humans. Their fleet arrived first, silent black ships cutting across the void. They did not wait for the others. They did not ask for plans. The humans always knew what they had come to do. The Kaloran general, now scarred and older from endless battles, stood at the command table when the first reports came in. "The human fleet, they are advancing," one officer cried out in shock. "They go in alone? Against billions?" The general only closed his eyes. "They are not soldiers. They are executioners. This is what they do." In the cold void of space, the humans struck. Their ships were smaller than the grand cruisers of the Alliance, but faster, sharper, and armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. They cut through swarm ships like knives through paper. Missiles burned through the dark, splitting entire clusters of enemies into clouds of fire. The humans did not shout over comms. They did not cry out orders. Their voices were calm, steady, precise. Each kill was another mark on a list. Each swarm ship was just another target to erase. The Alliance fleets followed, but they could barely keep up. Wherever humans passed, there was only wreckage. And then came the ground war. The Queen had landed, her greatest brood upon Varos itself, blotting out the skies with wings and thunder. The surface of the planet shook beneath the weight of millions of claws. The humans deployed first. They did not wait for support. Their transports cut through fire, dropping executioners into the heart of the storm. They landed in silence. The swarm rushed to meet them, rivers of bodies crashing against their line. And just as on every world before, the humans did not move back. Their rifles roared. Their cannons split the earth. Explosions painted the night sky. Their blades cut through chitin. Their grenades turned masses into burning ash. The aliens behind them watched in awe and terror. They had seen humans fight before, but never against a tide this large, this monstrous. And still the humans did not break. Hours passed. Days blurred together. Varos became a world of endless fire. And finally, deep within the swarm's burning nest, the humans reached the Queen. She was vast, taller than any fortress wall, her body a mountain of claws and eyes and venom. Her shriek shattered stone. Her wings blackened the sky. But the executioners did not flinch. They fought their way through rivers of acid, through endless waves of guardians until at last they stood before her throne of bone. The steel-gray commander led the charge. She raised her weapon, eyes colder than the void, and whispered words only her soldiers could hear. "This ends here." The Queen struck, her claws tearing through metal and stone. But the humans moved as one. They climbed her body, blasting through her armor, stabbing deep into her flesh. Explosions tore across her massive frame. Her shrieks shook the world, and then, with one final shot that pierced her heart, the Queen fell. The ground trembled. The swarm screamed in chaos. And then, silence. Across the galaxy, the tide stopped. Without their Queen, the swarm broke apart, scattering like shadows before the dawn. On Varos, the smoke cleared. The humans stood among the ruins. Their black armor burned and bloodied, but their eyes still sharp, still cold. The war was over. The galaxy was free. But as the celebration began across the stars, the humans did not celebrate. They packed their weapons. They gathered their dead. They stood in silence, as if nothing had changed. Because for them, nothing had. They had done what they came to do. They had executed the sentence. The Queen was dead. The swarm was broken. Across the galaxy, relief turned into joy, and joy into celebration. Entire planets lit up with fire and song. Bells rang in ancient cities that had been silent for centuries. Refugees who had lost everything wept in the arms of strangers. For the first time in living memory, there was peace. The Alliance declared a day of victory. Leaders gave speeches praising courage and unity. They spoke of heroes, of sacrifice, of hope restored. But amid the cheers, one truth could not be hidden. The war had not been won by the Alliance. It had been won by the humans. On Varos, the fortress world where the final battle ended, the other species gathered to thank their saviors. The Kaloran, General stood at the edge of the human camp, watching them in silence. The executioners were different from other armies. They did not raise banners. They did not sing. They did not carve monuments to themselves. They simply worked. They gathered their fallen, placing them gently in black caskets marked with only a single line of silver. No names, no ranks, just silence. They repaired their weapons, they sealed their ships. They moved like shadows, as if the victory had not been theirs at all. The general approached their commander, the woman with steel-gray eyes. Her armor was cracked, her face scarred, but she stood tall as if no wound could touch her. "You saved us all," the general said, his voice trembling. "The galaxy owes you everything." Her eyes did not soften. "The swarm was a disease. We cut it out. That is all." The general lowered his head. He wanted to thank her, to honor her people. But the words felt small in front of her cold certainty. Across the galaxy, voices rose asking what would happen now. Some leaders dreamed of making the humans guardians of the stars, protectors of peace. Others feared them, whispering of their merciless ways. Could such executioners ever be trusted in peace? But the humans had already decided. They were leaving. Their fleets withdrew quietly, without demands, without speeches. No medals were requested. No rewards were taken. They did not stay to rule. They did not ask for power. They did not even leave behind their technology. They simply returned to Earth. The galaxy begged them to remain. Worlds sent envoys offering gifts, offering alliances. The humans listened, but their answers were always the same. "We are not soldiers. We are not rulers. We are executioners. When the next shadow comes, you will call us. Until then, we go home." And so they vanished. But their absence left a silence heavy with thought. For in every alien heart was the memory of what they had seen. Men and women who stood unbroken against a tide that had crushed empires. Warriors who fought without mercy, yet carried their dead with a tenderness that broke the heart. The galaxy knew now what Earth truly was, not just a world of death, not just a race of survivors, but a blade kept in the dark, waiting for the moment it must be drawn. On Varos, long after the fleets had left, the Kaloran general stood on the battlefield. The ground was still black with ash. The air still smelled of smoke. He placed his hand on the soil and whispered, "They asked for soldiers. Earth sent executioners. And because of them, we live." Years passed. The galaxy rebuilt. Cities rose again from ruins. Children grew without fear. Stories of the humans spread like fire. Some painted them as saviors, others as monsters. But none denied the truth. When all hope was gone, it was the Deathworlders who stood. On Earth, life returned to its quiet rhythm. Farms bloomed. Cities thrived. Children played under skies unscarred by war. The executioners walked among them like ordinary men and women, carrying the silence of what they had done. They did not speak of it. But sometimes at night, when the stars were clear, they would look up at the sky. Their eyes were sharp, searching, as if waiting for the day when another cry for help would come. And it would. The galaxy was wide, and darkness always returned. But now every world knew this. When the swarm returns, or when another terror rises from the void, the galaxy will not call for soldiers. It will call for Earth, and Earth will answer, not with armies, not with heroes, but with executioners.